Graphic design defined. The what, how, where, when and who of graphic design. Welcome to Graphic Design Defined. Over the coming weeks, we'll take you on a stroll through the technicolor world of graphic design. We will cover everything from the visual and psychological art of storytelling, including branding, typography and logo design, to what to expect from a career as a professional graphic designer. This series of podcasts is brought to you by the Australian Academy of Graphic Design. Let's just dive right back into it.
I remember once when I was a young designer, I thought my subconscious would actually do that. And I was having a terrible time. We were just not cracking it.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be an idea, and there was nothing. And that happens to you once in your career and you never ever let it happen again.
Yeah. I do remember a stand-up comedian I used to know. He used to talk about how he'd have the best ideas in his dreams, and he was like, I'm going to start writing them down, wake up during the night and write them down, because in the morning then I'll have the best joke ever. And he woke up the next morning and the piece of paper said, I am a hammer.
Good gag.
It became very real.
But that's very true. I mean, one of the things that I encourage my creatives to do is staring at a screen all day is not a good idea, for many reasons. We all know probably why I'm wearing glasses. But staring at a screen is not a good idea. Getting up, walking around. I encourage as much as possible for creative people to get out and especially do and look at things that have nothing to do with what you're trying to crack. I'm lucky enough to work right in the centre of Dublin, where there's 2 art galleries within 100 meters of us. We have the National Art Gallery, and then we have another gallery which is more of kind of a modern art and more amateur art. I always say, just go in there, just immerse yourself in that world. And then when you come back, undoubtedly something will pop in. But the more times I've got up from my desk and walked away and then suddenly got an epiphany, that is, everyone's different. But for me, I think getting away from the work for a little while, and I don't mean slacking off. I don't mean playing a bit of Call of Duty. I mean, just being with your thoughts.
Yeah. Inspiration is everywhere, but you have to be out there and open up to it, don't you? I mean, you won't get it on your desk. I do think as well, when there's so many things you can be taught, but there's so many sort of skills outside of literally just coming up with great ideas and finding a great way to make it. I'm thinking from a graphic design point of view now as well. There's definitely skills, there's definitely creative artistry in there. But then, like presentation skills, for example, you're talking about, finding idea generation, and literally finding how to tap into that. And then I guess dealing with clients and things that what would you say are challenges that were sort of unexpected to you when you started out? Both of you, actually, but I'll start with Marcus. I know sometimes people are people, right? It can always be quite difficult to deal with people. But was there anything that sort of took you by surprise, that, that a challenge that you just did not see coming when you got into the world of creating, great ideas?
Yeah, it's your biggest stumbling block to creativity is your client, unfortunately. If you're very lucky, you're going to have, and I could count on this hand how many I've had in 24 years who get it. They just don't. And depending, you'd mentioned, Sam, you worked in Citibank. I've worked with an awful lot of banks creatively. And invariably, the marketing team will end up being someone who's just been there long enough. Not somebody who had any insight whatsoever into marketing or visuals of any kind, but just, I've been around long enough. So these are the stumbling blocks you tend to hit with all of your clients. I find the bigger the client, the more of a mess it becomes. But there's more marketing team. You can have sometimes cast of thousands. You could have 15, 16, 20 people in a meeting, and you're sitting there going, who's making the decisions? Then you find out the person making the decision isn't even in the meeting.
Okay, right. Oh my God.
Which is the worst. But then you've got somebody else purveying your brilliance to somebody else, and they're never going to present it the way you present it.
Of course,
Now, I'm painting a dark picture there, but that is unfortunately a huge obstacle. So as I always say to my creatives, I'm like, okay, you got a couple of obstacles. The first one's yourself, right? You got to get past your own critique of your own work. Your second one is going to be your creative director or your agency, or if you're freelance, it's going to be, that kind of trying to get across what they really want, probably in 2 or 3 iterations. But then when you get there, your biggest wall is going to be them. And if you can inspire them, and if you can, this is where presentation skills and everything else.
Yeah.
I've seen people sell mediocre work with such brilliance. I've seen people fail to sell great work. So I think clients, are amusing to a lot of people. They say the darndest things.
Okay.
There was a wonderful campaign recently, not that recently, about 10 years ago, where a load of creatives in our industry got together and they made posters of the most crazy things that clients have said.
Oh, brilliant.
Designed beautifully. It was called Sharp Suits. You can still look it up, I'm sure, if you can.
Right. Sharp Suits.
Yeah. So it was these beautiful, every art director in town pretty much did one. And I think a few from the UK as well. They actually, I think the guy who organized it is now creative director of White and Kennedy in UK. But some of them are hilarious. Clients say the darndest things. You have no idea what they're going to say. You could be so prepared, and then you just get hit with the left field. But like everything else in creative, if you stick to your guns, I think Sam, you mentioned it in one of the previous questions, rationales. You need to have a rationale for your work. I mean, I wrote one yesterday for a design technique that we wanted to use, and we really, really, really want to use. So I had to do a rationale on why it will work.
Yeah.
So yes, clients are if you have a good one, you will have an amazing relationship, and you will do lots of work with them. Sam, you mentioned in freelancing, there's certain clients who trust you, they like you, they know you're going to do great work. We have lots of them as well in agency life. But, there can be moments where it's a bit of a battle.
Yeah. How would you prepare people, Sam, for that? Dealing with clients and, the other kind of unexpected outside of creativity as the job that you do.
I think for me, I do a lot of research on the company as well. And if it's pitching to a certain person, you might be able to find a little bit about them. I know, Marcus, that you're keen on LinkedIn and stuff. You can get a little bit of information. The world as it is now on the internet, you can find a little bit of something about everyone. So most of the people that I kind of pitch towards, I'll try and dig a little bit into what does their LinkedIn look like, what is their tone of voice, what do they interact with, how are they speaking, and kind of get an idea of what they may or may not warm to within your work. And obviously that depends on the business as well a little bit, and the kind of the way the business is built. So yeah, it's tricky, but I always try and do a little bit of research, basically.
It's a good idea. It's great advice. You get to know your enemy.
Yeah, exactly. And then
the art of war. Yeah, it is very true that getting to know, one of the first things that we tend to do with clients when we get them is find out why they got into the business in the first place. What inspired you? What do you like? And you get a pretty good picture pretty fast of what they find to be great design.
That's a great question, actually, to pick apart when you approach a new client. Yeah. Because you're finding the source of them, and what their vision would be. Well, what they think their vision is. I suppose you convince them what a better vision is.
Yeah, I mean, look, everywhere is different. And one of the simplest models that I've come up with for clients is I answer the brief.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds very basic, but sometimes clients don't know what they want.
Is all this design chat suddenly stirring something up inside you? Head over to graphicdesignacademy.com.au. You'll get loads of info on courses, flexible study plans, and easy payment plans.
You answer the brief they gave you, but you also do something else.
Okay.
And I always put the deck together. Obviously, within my business, I'm in the art of attention. That's what advertising is. If you do not get people's attention, you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
So I start out by that little comfort nudge of this is all about attention. Now, look, we've done this based on your brief. Mm-hmm. It's good. It's fine. It'll do the job.
Yeah.
But you could do this.
Yeah. Right. Here's what you could have won. Yeah.
Here's what you could have won.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And more often than not, that's a good technique, because the worst thing you can do is go in without the brief being answered and say, we think you should do this.
Yeah.
That's suddenly everyone's on the back foot. People are, well, hang on, I asked you to do this, but you've gone and done this.
Yeah.
But if you say, look, you have this, it's ready to go. It's great. We have everything costed up. Everything can be done. Now have a look at this. I'm happy to report more often than not they'll go for the nicer idea,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
at least an iteration of nicer idea or design.
Because I
So-
was going to ask you actually, how do you approach that when you're presented with a brief? And you know, you obviously know the industry better than the client, depending on the client.
Oh, yeah.
And you're presented a brief that you're thinking that is not going to
Oh,
work. I mean,
sometimes you just don't understand why they
Yeah.
even came to that conclusion.
yeah, yeah,
And you know, I mean, I'm lucky enough to work in quite a solid machine that has strategists and
Right.
all manner of people who also input. But if you don't have that, you're your own strategist, you're your own planner,
Yeah.
you're your own, you know, you have to figure out. But sometimes you can see that something is so far off the mark that you have to give them a caution. And I'm very careful with language when
Yeah.
I put it together for them, you know, caution, advice, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so we would advise that you don't do that. That's a bit mild. Caution, you're getting a bit more serious.
Yeah,
And then, you know, caveat is a great word. Throw that in as much
yeah,
as possible.
yeah.
But if what we try and do is, even when they're so far off the mark, you cannot make them feel like they were so far off the mark.
Right.
People are people. They're going to feel offended. They're going to feel like, I don't need to be lectured.
And then they double down on the idea because they get effective out of it.
So everything is relationship based.
Sure.
Sam will agree, certainly with his freelance clients, it's all about relationship. Some accounts in some agencies, we've had some accounts 25 plus years, and there's a reason for that, because they trust opinions.
A lot of soft skills, right?
A lot of soft skills.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think relationships is a massive one. It doesn't matter if you're freelance or within a company or how you sit within an internal agency. Sometimes relationships with people and knowledge of people is a massive thing. As a graphic designer, you'll have to manage and tailor the way that you talk to certain people to certain, you know. You're not going to get anywhere with certain people if you talk a certain way, but with other people, you're going to have to change the way they speak. Otherwise, they're not going to hear you, and they're not going to understand, and they're not going to respond to you in the same way.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sometimes the hardest thing I think that I'm still learning, it's every day's a school day, is what people actually mean. People have certain ways of speaking, especially clients, where you're really trying to be a little bit discerning here and go, what are you actually saying? And sometimes it can be, creative people tend to be quite emotionally driven when it comes to a change, let's say. So let's say there's an amazing piece of design that needs a change. Now you can absolutely knee-jerk that and do something wild and completely change everything. But when you really listen to them, it's actually just a little tweak they were looking for.
Right.
It wasn't start over. And sometimes it took me years to figure that out, that when a client does reject something, sometimes it can be rejected on the maddest little thing. And you go, oh God, so I could have actually kept exactly what I wanted, and all I had to do was this little tweak. Okay, that's a lesson. I'll remember that. So trying to be a client
Piercing what they're telling you. Yeah. And I remember, like, it took me a while to figure this out myself as well. You know, this very famous saying for a writer anyway, you know, kill your darlings. And often you might have this absolute gem of a piece. For me, it'd be a piece of writing. For you guys, I guess it would be, you know, a piece of something you created. And it's not going to work for that particular project. Would you sort of park that aside, and would you have like a little pocket full of these things that maybe you go, yeah, do you have like a bottomless pit of these things? Yeah.
That would be the same. Drawers full of stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
that helps you get over it, I suppose. It helps you not be so brokenhearted that if it's not working for that, it doesn't mean this great idea is dead, right? That you can actually rehash it.
Absolutely. There's a great saying a great creative said to me once, and I've always kept it with me. And it was, clients get the work they deserve. And it's almost a mantra to me. Okay. So if you have an obstinate, difficult client, they're going to get quite functional work.
Okay.
Right, that's fine. Everyone's happy. But if you have a client who's incredibly ambitious and incredibly forward thinking, they're going to get the best work from their creatives, from their designers. So clients get the work they deserve.
Wow, karma, right in the center of it all. Built on. I'm conscious of our time here, Marcus. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it up here with more of a broad sort of question. I mean, it's really about, it's related obviously to graphic design within, I suppose, the advertising industry, but any of the industries really. well, Sam can tell you more about this actually, but some students talk about specializing in, more particular aspects, and other students or graduates have a more broad sort of skill set, or they're more interested. Would you sort of, I guess starting out, it's probably a good idea to try a few things and get out of your comfort zone, right? And see where you lay. But overall, when you're working with different creatives, do you prefer to work with someone who's a specialist in that particular area, or does it make a difference to you really if they're just good, or do you prefer a broad sort of spread?
Yeah, it's a really good question. What's interesting about graphic design within advertising is it actually has two schools. It has two branches. You've got pure graphic design. So within my team, I'd have graphic designers.
Right.
And what they want to do is pure graphic design. They don't want to ever have to deal with any advertising baloney. They just want to work on the pure, and that's absolutely brilliant. And that's great.
If you're suddenly seeing graphic design in a whole new light, and now you want to know more, take a look at the website graphicdesignacademy.com.au.
Then you tend to have graphic designers who've branched into what's called art direction. And art direction is you're a designer first and foremost. You must design everything that goes to client, but you also work in a team and you work across every media touch point. So you work in everything from film to animation, illustration, everything. So the reason I fell into that area of design was I personally loved the idea of branching out into as many different areas as I possibly could. Much like music, the way some people just like a genre and some people are multi-genre.
Yeah.
I think with design, I was multi-genre.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about art direction is it's an interesting job where you are a graphic designer, but very rarely does your actual graphic design go out into the world. Doesn't that sound crazy? So you're the curator of great talent from elsewhere.
Right.
So I've had some of my work go out because I've went, well, I can do this. So I've done my own designs, and I'd be one of those art directors who does an awful lot of that.
Sure.
But when you are going for a specific look or specific feel, there are an awful lot of designers that I would use who are specialists, who do work in one particular area. Right now, there's this great designer that I'm hoping to get a campaign out of. He draws faces into maps. It's incredible. His name's Ed Fairburn, absolutely brilliant English fella, I believe. God, I hope I'm not offending him if he hears this. But what he does is an incredibly specific look and feel that I wanted.
Yeah.
And it's the same with other design styles. I'd be like, this is what I want. This is the person I want. So for example, at the moment, we're working an awful lot with QR codes, which if your listeners don't know, if you guys don't know, I only recently found out means quick response. So there you go.
All right.
So QR codes have been around forever. Sam, I'm sure you'll remember when they first came around, the ugliest looking things on the planet.
Yeah. Yep.
Then they disappeared, and then they came back. Now they're back to stay. Every client wants to use them because you can record who scanned them and you can have all your metrics. But they're ugly. There's no designer on the planet would look at that and go, I love it. So I was going to do a campaign for a major client of ours that needed to be quick response. And there was no way in God's earth I was going to put up a horrible QR code, even if you can put your logo in the middle. It's just horrible. Yeah. So there's this amazing company I found in Montreal who make art QR codes.
Oh, brilliant.
So not AI, not anything. They have a collective of designers, artists, graphic designers. You give them the brief. It takes like 8 weeks. It's a very collaborative process, but the end result is one of the most incredible things. You wouldn't even look and see it's a QR code. It's so beautiful. So in that respect, you need to prioritize because these people, that's all they do. So being multifaceted, I think, is more an advertising design thing. A graphic designer that is multifaceted is obviously very talented and use that talent.
Yeah.
But your book, as to pedal back to where we were, your portfolio, or your book as I call it, your book is going to be your shop window. So whether you're a specialist or whether you're multidisciplined, that's going to be the area that you'll get the work from. So I'm always looking for the best graphic designers I can to make my work look incredible, because that's my job.
Yeah.
Sometimes to make it, but mostly to purvey it and curate it from somewhere else.
But then from a career point of view, and actually this goes to you as well, Sam. I mean, if you're that specialist and that, okay, you're brilliant, you're going to get all the work on those lovely QR codes, for example, but that's all you're going to do, right? So is that not limiting then, your career opportunities?
I think what I say to a lot of students is, I think keep it broad at the beginning. I think the worst thing you can do is specialize too early on, from my point of view, because then you're going to sort of pigeonhole yourself, and you're never going to come out of that. And although what Marcus works in, obviously advertising and stuff, I've worked in internal agencies which do all sorts of stuff, graphic design based. So we'll just get an animation brief in, and next time we'll get a print job in. It's just the way the world works. And especially more nowadays as well, because you only have to look on LinkedIn and jobs that are going on there, and a graphic design job can be very varied from place to place, and they either want you to do 1,000 things or one thing really well. So I think from my point of view, I'd open them up and say, look, try and do a bit of everything and see what suits your style, see what suits your abilities. And then you can begin to refine what you offer if you want to. If not, you want to do I do a bit of everything. At the moment, I do all film stuff and animation and web and print. And I enjoy that because it is a separate way of looking at stuff. You can compartmentalize each piece.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially starting out. I mean, because you don't know yet what your skill set lies, really, or where your talents are going to shine.
Like musicians, I mean, you listen to your favorite band's early work, it's going to be different to their later work. You're going to find an area that they'll sit into. So I thoroughly agree with Sam. Start out by just trying it all and see where you end up. If you do get very specialized and you are lucky enough to be someone like Ed who does those particular things, or the QR people, that's fine. Yeah. But I'm sure that's not all they do. I'm sure there's loads of stuff they're doing on the side hustles that Sam's likes to call.
Sam's favorite words, okay, well, look, I'm going to wrap it up there because I can't believe it's been almost an hour. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. I wonder, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Marcus, do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to pass on to anyone? And I didn't even prep him for this, so this is really unfair.
It is. You know what? I'm going to say the first thing that comes to mind, right? Having a career in creativity is incredibly rewarding. I've been doing this for close to a quarter of a century, and I still get a buzz every time I get a brief. I still get butterflies of what the possibilities are going to be. I still feel now, look, there's going to be your day-to-day work, but I'm talking about these 4, 5, 6 moments a year where you're going to have something really nice to work on. Love what you do. That flow you get, that creative flow, whether it's for commercial gain or for a hobby, it's the same. Your brain doesn't know the difference. Your brain does not know the difference between being really into making something for someone else or yourself. It's a wonderful job to be in. Any artistic pursuit is wonderful. So that's my takeaway would be, I see an awful lot of friends who got into what they were told. And I think an awful lot of people in the creative industry, graphic design, being part of it, either fall into it or have this almost incredible draw towards it. Whatever way you were, I'm a fall into, and I love it. And I know people who have seen it as their calling and love it.
If you find the subject of graphic design inspiring and you're thinking, I want to know more, head over to graphicdesignacademy.com.au. Whether you just want to see if graphic design is for you, or you're a pro and you need to upskill, there's a course for everyone.